And we're live. Greetings, everyone. I am joined today by the chairperson of the Commonwealth Youth Council, Mr. Kim Allen, who hails from Papua New Guinea. He is all the way in the Pacific, and I am all the way in the Caribbean. And today, he will not be able to turn on his camera due to some challenges, but he is no less present. I'll allow Kim to give his own introduction and tell us a little bit about himself and his journey and experience as a youth leader. I'm sure that he didn't become chairperson of the CYC overnight. Tell us, Kim.
Thank you so much, Benjamin. And once again, thank you for the opportunity to be on this call, on this webinar with the Commonwealth Students Association. It's a privilege, and I'm grateful for coming online. Sincere apologies, given the network challenges at my end. I'm unable to turn live. Other than that, it's a pleasure here, and thank you to you, and also to our audience joining online. My name is Kim Allen. I am from Papua New Guinea, and it's really a privilege to serve as the chairperson for the Commonwealth Youth Council since last year, June, when we were installed in Kigali at the Commonwealth Youth Forum, which happened alongside of the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Kigali, Rwanda. Since then, the role of the Commonwealth Youth Council, or CYC, for this I'll be using the term short, CYC. It's to represent young people similar with as Commonwealth Students Association, but a diverse issues in terms of policy advocacy, in terms of youth campaigns and awareness, and also as a liaison between national youth delegates at the country level and at the Commonwealth Secretariat level. So I am grateful to be on this webinar, and yes, we can unpack some of those discussions throughout the call.
Thanks, Kim. So our topic today is borderline sensitive, because whenever people talk about incentives and money, people get jittery. But, you know, Kim and I, we're not going to leave any stone unturned. The topic today is, should youth and student leaders be incentivized? Should youth and student leaders be incentivized? Kim, before we get into the meat of it all, tell me about your experience as a student leader, youth leader, some of the positions that you would have held prior to becoming chairperson of the Commonwealth Youth Council.
Thank you, Benjamin. And I think, it's a long journey.
Benji is fine.
I think, thank you. So it's been a while, and I think, we have been sitting on the same table, and we asked this question, did you ever see yourself back then, some 10 years ago, did you ever see yourself? Remember, we were in London in March, and we asked that question to ourselves: did you see yourself becoming the chair of Commonwealth Youth Council or Commonwealth Students Association? It would be also interesting. I know you'll be sharing that experience also, so I'll be really grateful to hear from you. But 10 years ago or a while back, I grew up in the village, in fact, and you have this communal setting and the church, growing up in the church. So it's more like a church. You come out from a childhood and you play roles within the church youths as a child and as a student back then at the primary age between 10 and 15, and then between 15 and 20. So I played various roles as a church youth leader back at home. Within the church, we used to raise funds from the community I come from, in an island community, an island by the name of Tubetube in the southeast of Papua New Guinea, where we raise funds for our students. And I mean the church youth members to attend church conferences, church youth events, even hosting church youth meetings, and an island group where you have number of youths from other island groups coming together to host, to have 2 weeks church youth rallies, which comprises of, Bible studies, student exchanges from other island groups, and even sports. That's the fun part of it. Towards the later, after you receive some trainings on life skills, principle guidance on what life is based on Christian principles, and then you have play sports at the end. So that kind of frame the kind of thinking that you could do more. And as you progress, through the education career from lower primary to higher primary and up to the, tertiary or university level, of course, your mind's open up. I come out of the community and then I see there's so much to do, especially with other young people outside of your community. The more you see the challenges. So, of course, I did the same thing, but at a higher level. The same principles you learned as a childhood or while back in your community, mobilizing the young people, raising funds. We used to go around and clean yards to get paid for church events. We used to do walkathons and even baking in as young people to raise funds to send students to another provinces, church youths to other provinces to attend youth conferences. And I never attended those conferences. My role was to support and mobilize resources so that we can send our young people to attend those events. And it was fun, when they attend those conferences, they come back and they share their experience, and you can see their face. They were so excited to share. And of course, our role is to support and keep them, checking them up on keeping them in prayer while they're out there. So that's where it started. I never knew that I would become the chair of Commonwealth Youth Council. But as I entered university, I played a role in various student association in my province, leading the provincial clubs, and also the department, the school, the faculty that I was part of, which is communications. I also led as the chair to facilitate the same similar team, raising funds for the department, raising funds for the school itself, and going back home during holidays and doing awareness, student awareness, tertiary awareness to lower secondary school so that they can find the kind of course they want to study when they get to the tertiary level, when they graduate from secondary level, transiting into towards university or college. So those are the kind of experiences. Of course, after finishing from studies, while working, then I saw the opportunity coming up with the Commonwealth Council. I never knew of the Commonwealth Youth Council, but I follow things online. I read content online, so it pops up, and of course, something that is in line with what I do. Commonwealth Youth, I work within the youth space, and I said, oh, let me give it a try about this, and it happened that by grace and of course the privilege, the mandate given the voters, the national youth delegates given you the privilege to be in such role which I am in right now. Thank you.
Kim, I'm smiling because I can identify with much of what you said, and I'm thankful that you really gave us the grassroots story, because many of us started out in church or whatever community religious institution that we were a part of. I started out in church as well, doing these community projects. Yes. And the skills that you build while being involved in these spaces are now skills that I have brought to the table in my leadership of the CSA. Skills that I exercised when I was learning at 10 and 11 and 12. I joined the youth department of my church when I was, I think, 12. And I was very active for perhaps about 10 years or maybe a little bit less. And I learned so much about fundraising, about planning meetings, about planning engagement activities. Of course, because we're doing it for the cause of faith, you don't expect any payment.
Absolutely.
The incentive that we're looking for is it's in eternity. We're not looking for a certificate or an applause or a check when we're doing that. But you said that you went on to university and you got involved in more in youth work. Were you incentivized when you entered the tertiary arena?
Yeah, thank you, and Benji, for sharing also your experiences. I think it's relatable as you shared. For universities, no, it's not really an incentive that, and I think it's a challenge, especially you give additional time. There are certain institutions, government that does incentivize student representative roles in those universities. But I went to a Catholic church university as well, a college. So it was not incentivized, but of course, as you said, we do it for passion. We do it for a cause we believe in, and that also frame. It's doing it for a passion, but of course, there are certain times that you have to understand the challenges as student leaders go through.
When you hear the word incentivize as used in the context we're using it, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, thank you. That's a really good question, and I think incentivize basically means financing and resourcing the kind of roles we are in. So in the event of this student leadership roles or youth leadership roles, you know, and most of these are volunteer roles, and even in the current role that you and I are in. And do they give allowance for this? Because it's not only that the students are committing extra time away from apart from their studies, apart from their work. Not only that, but some of the students are also transiting towards workforce. So it may be challenging, especially to even just to purchase data for communication, to access data, internet coverage in order to attend meetings. And now we understand we are in a digital age. And data is also costly. And some countries it may be cheaper, accessible, while other countries may be very expensive. And in PNG's case, internet cost is very expensive to buy data. Apart from that, in terms of resource, the kind of resources that you provide and support, and even platforms build student leaders' capacity, and putting them into platforms that can allow them exposure. Of course, you and I had that privilege of exposure, but at the student level, how can you build capacity so that they can, when you build a student leader's capacity, that kind of skill he or she gains, it will reflect on the kind of leadership and also affects the people that he or she is leading. And for the particular cause, the institution that has set up that particularly. So if it's a student representative council within a university or within a college, it has to serve the purpose. But in order to serve that purpose, you need to give them resources. You need to give them finance. You need to give them allowance. You need to give them an office space. You need to give them some kind of digital access. Even you need to give them mentorship programs. Those are kind of programs that not only empower them, but you want to see the result of that. If you create a role leadership to function as a student representative, you want it to be function, and it can't function if you can't give the kind of support and the resources that that particular representative council it requires.
Him, do you see things like preference to meeting heads of state, monarchs, the preference given to student leaders for them to greet them as a form of incentive? Do you see travel as a form of incentive? Do you see certificates of recognition as a form of incentive?
I wouldn't say it's a form of incentive. I would say it's an exposure. It's an opportunity to be exposed. And at the same time, it depends on, the individual leader, student leader, he himself or herself, how do you capitalize on those, opportunity or platforms? And the exposure, the privilege to travel and to attend such ministerial meetings, the thing is the value in it. Of course, it's high value that you are exposed and you represent the young people and the students at such high level dialogues and meetings. But the question I always come out of those meeting rooms in Benzi, it's like what is the impact of this meeting? Is the kind of comments and the statements and the dialogues that we have is impactful enough that governments can take practical actions or organizations can follow up and say, hey, we are committed. We can do this based on the discussions. And that actually rarely happens. Maybe one or two, like for example, now I think there's an initiative led by AI. We are still following up, and of course, there's positive outcome. But this is led by Commonwealth Secretariat, and it's commendable because it's gonna reach young people. But the meetings you and I attend, I would say it's a great privilege and opportunity. But the real question is, how effective is this meeting, and what are we getting out of this meeting? If it costs some good amount of money to travel to such meetings, can we utilize that funding also to create some projects? That's the challenge, and that's the question I always ask in my mind: is my travel somehow? What is the impact of my travel to the real tangible projects and the role that I stand for? What's your take about that?
No, I appreciate that. I also don't feel that when you are functioning in a representative capacity, travel to a meeting should be considered an incentive. You're doing your job. You are elected to represent students, and that involves attending certain high-level meetings. I also agree with you that we shouldn't just go to meetings because we can hop on a plane. I think it should be meaningful. And I think we should be able to report to our constituents to say, we went to this meeting, this is our contribution, this is what we are seeking to achieve from it. We didn't just go because we were nominated to attend and the ticket was paid for by the nominating institution. I absolutely agree with you, Kim.
Absolutely.
I think travel is glamorized amongst young people because we perhaps see it as, we see it as incentive, but I don't see it as an incentive. And I don't think it should be used as a carrot to pull young people either.
Absolutely, Benji. That's a very good point you raised. The young people travel, the scene is a glamour. And I think not many young people know that, you post content online and they see, oh, you are traveling to this particular meeting and so forth. But they don't understand at the same time the kind of work on the ground, and it depends on the particular and even the role also. You go into a meeting in 8 to 6 p.m., 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. It's very intense because as you said, you're there for a particular purpose and it's part of your role. You sit throughout very intensive meetings trying to raise issues and trying to lobby and trying to talk about the issues of young people. You come out exhausted, and people see, of course, young people see this. Okay, if you stand in that role, you're gonna travel. No, because even currently, if certain events are happening in particular region, I don't need to be there. There are also regional representatives that nominate, and they are your extended arm to represent the council in a particular region or even within the country. You don't need to be there. So it's, as you said, it's a duty, and that duty comes with a responsibility and a call to be accountable to your constituents. And for the Commonwealth Youth Council, it's the national youth delegates that we are accountable to, and the governments as well.
Yes. Through the Commonwealth Secretariat, I have had the privilege of meeting Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, as well as King Charles. Should we see those things? Let me not rephrase them as things. Should we see these monarchical meet and greets as incentives? How should we view that?
Thank you, Benji. I think it's not an incentive. It's a platform that, and I commend the Commonwealth Secretariat and also the youth program. They're doing the best that they can to bring us to that platform. The exposure, it's part of the duty and it's part of the institution. What Commonwealth Secretariat provides within that institution, and it's not any incentive, but it's a exposure. So how much can we sell? How much can we promote the agenda of, in our case as Commonwealth Youth Council is the agenda for young people, youth development, youth policy. How much can you utilize that exposure to plug in the agenda to the monarchs, that if they have that capacity, if that they have that level of influence, then they supposed to be driving what we are promoting, what the council stands for and pushing for. That's the agenda that we want to plug in or flag to such monarchs to raise at their level, because there are certain levels of power we couldn't, as youth representatives, couldn't, have direct influence, and you need those kind of people to have access to speak on your behalf, to reach out to raise those youth agendas that we are working towards or for.
I think we see eye to eye on these points, and I'm so happy that we do, because there is a school of thought that you don't need to incentivize young people who are in these leadership positions by giving them some monetary compensation, but you can just, because they get to travel, that's their incentive. Because they get to meet high-level persons, that's their incentive. But I absolutely agree with your position, and I think I really am jumping to the gun, because I'm quite firm on my view in this. When you are creating organizations for young people to represent, the very foundation of the organization should contemplate how these young people will be incentivized. How will these young people be properly recognized for the work that they do? And the recognition I want is not just experience. We should be paid. I absolutely think we should be paid. Tell us, as Commonwealth Youth Council chairperson, is this a paid role?
Benji, I think you and I stand on the same viewpoint that we raised on multiple occasions. It's not a paid role, first. It's a volunteer role. It's a privilege. We had the privilege of exposure, as you said. There are platforms and meetings that you access, and you represent the young people, youth voices in terms of youth policy advocacy and youth development work. But at the same time, it's a cost. It costs to pay data, and that's where it requires allowance, stipends, incentives.
Absolutely. And how many young people does the Commonwealth Youth Council represent?
So there's 1.2 billion young people. We have within the council, we have 10 executives. You also have executives there. They commit their time. And I think we raised these issues, and some of those issues it's in the youth ministerial statement and in the lobby and the discussions at the table. So we are the privilege that the council also with CSA and other networks were represented through CYC on the youth ministerial this round table, where we particularly I've mentioned this. I think it happened every day to request for incentives, request for allowance, and I think it was very clear. But the actions are otherwise.
How much time have you had to devote to serving as CYC chair? Tell us about what happens in the background. Tell us about what happens when you are drafting documents and responding to emails and doing all of this organizational work tell us. I'm going to tell you what my experience has been, but I want you to tell them so that all who are hearing can have these myths debunked, that you're in the Commonwealth, so you're sitting on a wad of cash and you're being paid, and you can give somebody a British visa and you can give someone a scholarship. Tell them, Kim, just lay it out plain.
Thank you, Benji. I think, yeah, it's on the terms of reference, the volunteer terms of reference, it says 5 hours per day. Sometimes, sometimes I don't do 5 hours on a day. Of course, because I have to do work in order to get paid. And sometimes I don't do volunteer work. I don't commit to the CYC like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I don't do that because I need to do work and get paid so that I can pay for the data and I can do the volunteer work because it's of course online and on the other side,
and so that you can live.
absolutely, you can buy food. On the other hand, when it comes to high level ministerial meetings, like I just finished an hour meeting and then I joined here online. So in terms of drafting statements, in terms of reviewing terms of references, documents for meetings, and to present to youth ministers or governments, it consumes so much time. Like even I finish work at maybe 5 p.m. and then from 5 p.m. to 6 or 7 p.m. there's like an hour or 2 hours break. And I worked from 7 p.m. to 1 or 2 a.m. to read stuff, to maybe review some documents if it's shared by the Secretariat or youth ministers or even partners, and to provide feedbacks. And some of these are just they're feedbacks, they're documents that needs to be reviewed to provide youth perspectives. And these are chunks of documents. So you read line by line to understand the context, and it consumes so much time. Of course, sometimes you delegate task to your exco members, to your fellow executives who are part of the team driving the youth council. I would also love to hear from your end, Benji.
Kim, in my terms of reference, it says 15 to 20 hours a week. And I know that there are weeks when I exceed that. Because it's also a thing, I may or may not have a complex. When I get locked into something, I really get locked into it. So
I understand.
I've spent hours, working on plans and ideas. And, some person may think, well, you're not actually going on the ground to do something, but coordination, strategizing, planning, follow-ups, meetings take time.
It
takes
does.
time. And when you are in a voluntary organization, yes, where your team members are also volunteers, but you sit as a chairperson. When one of your team members decides that they're no longer interested, or they're just not going to respond, or they have a family matter that will require their absence for a few weeks, or they have an exam that will require their absence for a few weeks, is it that their portfolio is left abandoned? You as a chair will have to find ways to ensure that that person's portfolio is still carried. And sometimes, in my experience, it means doing what they were supposed to do while they're absent, which takes time. Sometimes I really wonder if I'm foolish for doing this. Sometimes I wonder if my colleagues are equally foolish for doing this, but it's passion. It's passion and belief, and it's purpose. And when you're driven by purpose, you will do things that are not conventional, which involves spending so much time doing something that you really know that you should be getting some form of incentive for. And I think, Kim, there is also an ethical question to this matter of having youth do this kind of work for free. I think there's an ethical consideration that should be probed. And I think that this is my view. More and more young people are going to realize that this workload is not commensurate with what they're benefiting, and less people will be interested in these roles. And that is a threat to the program. And I think it needs to be fixed. And so I'm so happy that it was included in the ministerial meeting, and I hope that they'll actually action it.
Yes,
I really do.
Absolutely, absolutely. I hope they do. And again, as you said, it requires follow up. And to date, we are still following up on some of those action items that we have requested the youth ministers.
But what we're describing is not unique to CYC or CSA. There are several organizations set up, serve and represent young people. It's not that I expect all of them to be incentivized. Yes, I do believe in volunteerism, but I believe that when the workload is of a certain magnitude, it cannot just be voluntary alone.
Absolutely, and I think you mentioned a very clear lines there. The workload and also the level of engagement. And I think if it's internship, we can also say internship programs or youth volunteer. And I also say that I believe in the power of volunteer work. You do it out of passion because you believe in a particular cause. At the same time, there are level of engagement where as a young person you come out of the tertiary or the community volunteer, and then you have also a life to sustain. And that's coming back to the question you raised of ethical question towards volunteering. And you see some of the international organizations. I also did internship programs with the UN, and it's an unpaid internship program. And if you can deliver the same mandate or you can deliver the same task, the internship program it's a great opportunity. But at the same time, we are living in a society that costs. It costs funds. It costs money to buy things, or it costs money to survive. And of course, you volunteer for a cause, you do internship because you believe in a worthy cause, and also as a progression to learn, to build your capacity, to build your networks. But at the same time, organizations should also understand the challenges out there. And I think that kind of narrative, that kind of approach has to be practically changed, where organizations have to incentivize, provide allowance, give support to students, to young people, to youth workers transiting from college or community into a professional workforce.
Absolutely. But Kim, some of our peers have made it bad for others because we take on roles and we are not responsible about it. We don't do the work, or we don't communicate, and we just make it look bad for others. So, there is already apprehension about young people, and then it is buttressed by that kind of poor work ethic. But there's also the argument that that's not just young people, that's people. So young people shouldn't be disadvantaged because we're youth, because people in general demonstrate that when it comes on to roles and responsibilities. Yes. What do you think about a performance-based model for incentivizing youth work? Roles like the executive committee. You know what? Let me just give honor to my executive committee. Some of them are hard workers. Kim, I can tell you, Francis Azubike, Francis has taken his role very seriously. Francis has been a consistent executive member. Your countryman, Bradley is phenomenal. Alicia not only is Alicia functioning in her substantive role as Caribbean and America's rep, but she actually took on the social media pages because there was a gap. She took it on for several months. I'm telling you, I have been blessed to be working alongside a team who really they are also being fueled by passion. But sometimes I wonder how sustainable it is. How much longer can we get from the team running like this when people have competing roles? You know, some of these roles, they are being incentivized. How much longer? But yes, what do you think about the performance-based model?
Thank you, Benji. And look, yes, absolutely. I commend you and your team for providing out the outcomes out there for CSA. And I can tell you also, I have amazing people working in my team as well within the CYC executives. I count on them, my vice chairpersons, across the region. They're from Caribbeans. My vice chairperson also sits into the year of youth committee. One of my vice sits on the year of committee. She chairs, Christabel, she chairs the year of youth committee. We have also a policy vice chairperson. I count on his expertise, and Ajay, and of course Everton, who does the digital youth academy. So, and of course my regional reps as well, and the special interest rep. There are some people, of course, and I count on them, especially when it comes to regional dialogues, youth dialogues, or the vice chairpersons. I count on them because, and I can say that I don't qualify in all the expertise because I lack some of the skill sets, and I may not be well vested in a particular area, and I count on the team to provide expert guidance, expert skill sets, to provide feedbacks. So, for example, the vice chairperson for policy, I count on him to provide opinions, perspectives on every youth statement, every document, technical document that comes through to the CYC to provide feedback. So, and I count on the team to provide it. So I also commend them for the great work that they do. Sometimes I feel, the kind of responsibility. How do you appreciate when they provide so much of their time, dedication, and effort to progress the CYC? There are challenges as well within the team. Of course, every organization has challenges as well. And those, how do I manage? When it comes to performance based, it comes again on the mandate. What is the CYC stands for? What is the youth network stands for? Is it a representation, or is it a youth development, or is it a combination of all? And I always try to limit, measure the mandate and the outcome of performance based on the time and the platform itself, or the what the council stands for and represent. When we came in last year in June 2023, 2022, I saw that there were going to challenges. I read through the reports, the last two reports back, and all I read through was the challenges. But I was thinking in my mind, how do you counter and address these challenges in terms of structure, in terms of institutions, challenges, how do we set up all this, even reaching to the governments and initiating projects, resource challenges, finance challenges, all these challenges that were indicated in the reports by the previous team since 2013. And I told my team very frankly, I told them, I said, okay, we're going to go through some challenges, very difficult challenges to kickstart this CYC and of course lead it into the next phase. And today we are still going through those challenges. And sometimes, and then we limit down to, so now in terms of performance, what we can do within the next 2 years. You can stay for 5 years, you can stay for 6 years in a representative role and do nothing. But what is one thing or two things that we can do within the 2 years that can progress so that the next team can come. And that's for us, we have done few things, not many, but few things to do set up, to establish network and to revive the council so that the next team, and also prepare in advance for the next team so they don't repeat the same mistakes and the challenges that we have gone through. So in terms of performance, it's based on time and what the objectives that we have set when we came in. Over to you, Benji.
I think this is a beautiful segue into my last question, which really is a free discussion on transformational leadership. Tell me about how you view transformational leadership and servant leadership. And tell me about your leadership style.
Thank you. Yeah, it's every individual has a different approach, and even the recipient, the people you lead, also requires some kind of I would say, how can they be approached at a certain degree? Not everybody is on the same degree. So I always have this, and I learned this while in secondary, while in school. Most of the roles that I were in, it was managing expectations, and sometimes it consumes so much time and resources to manage expectations of every individual. But when it comes to servant leadership, of course, we serve with purpose. We serve because your constituents, and for us is the national delegates, believe and have appointed you to represent their voices to the governments, to the Commonwealth Secretariat, international organizations on the issues that young people encounter. And that is the cause that drives, as an individual and as a team, as CYC executives. It comes back, every individual is a leader. And I believe that it's not based on titles. You strip off the CYC chairperson. Before I became a chairperson, I was an individual. And after, in the next year, I will finish from the CYC
Say
chairperson.
that again. I love that
You
point.
know,
Yes, that's a quote. That's a quote.
Yeah. And I think we understand that, you come in without the title and you will exceed also, you will leave the title and exceed the role. But what's more important is the cause and the purpose that you serve for, to represent young people with a genuine heart. And I think it comes back to the first discussions we had, where people see glamour in either in international travels or in attending meetings. It's not about that. There is a reflection of what you believe and fight. You do as part of your duty. Because if you don't do that, then it becomes you faking it. So the kind of servant leadership is you believe in something that you do. And I think we do it over time and time again. That it's just part of you. And in terms of transformational leadership, you want something to change. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be big to be transformational. And that's something if within Commonwealth Youth Council, how can I build, and I've multiple times, within the executives and to the national youth delegates, how can I empower my fellow youth or somebody from the school or my colleague, that he can do something better, or he can become better, even better than me, or even the next person coming up can be better than me, and he can advance and do things within his reach or even beyond his reach to create change, a positive change in the community. And transformational leadership for me, before CYC, very basic things. If there is no water access in my village, in my community, how can I reach out within my network, within my sphere of influence? How can I reach out to get resources so that I can support the community so that they can have clean, accessible water on the island because of climate change? There is transformational leadership, and it comes in a multi-diverse, setting, environment, and the sphere of influence. If you can impact somebody's life individually, and if they can go and do something greater or something positive, either with their peers in the school or with their youth networks in the CSO, that is the kind of young person that we want to impact. We want to give them the positive feedback, positive energy to them that, yes, if I can do it and do it genuinely, you know, we are living in an age where there's so much distraction that even so much the kind of intention living, intention saving as a leader is very important and crucial, because if you get your intentions wrong, everything down the line is wrongly motivated. So it has to believe in positive. And I think reflecting back to the first series of conversations that we had in the church upbringing, the Christian principles, the communal setting that you come out of sets those foundations to believe in a cause. It sets you the foundation to say, yes, I am in for a role despite the challenges. Of course, we admit mistakes, we admit challenges, we admit shortfalls. But how can we change the course or even prepare or equip someone behind you so that they can lead better and they can influence more greater impact to other people's lives? Benji,
Thank you. Thank you,
over to
Kim.
you.
Thank you. Well, my answer to the question I posed would have to start with my faith. My theme scripture, if you would have it, comes from the book of Psalms, chapter 127, verse 1, that says, except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. Except the Lord keep the city, watchman waketh but in vain. That in application means to me, God must be at the center of everything. Otherwise, there is no value in it. And for me, being elected to serve as chairperson is the hand of God in action. And He has put me here. And I have a duty as part of my faith to discharge the best quality leadership that I can under God. So my motivation, though I'm calling for incentives, my motivation is not money. It couldn't be money because we're not getting money. Yes, I don't have a political agenda. You know, I don't even know how I could use this to get into politics. I really don't have any personal agenda. But because I have been put here for a time, I know that my faith requires me to give my best. And that is what I have been trying to do since last year, October. In terms of transformational leadership, there are some basic questions that I ask. What is the purpose of this organization that you've been placed in to lead? The organization represents students across the Commonwealth on educational matters. What are the countries in the Commonwealth? Are the countries in the Commonwealth the major active nations, or is it all 56 countries? Should we ignore Vanuatu? Should we ignore St. Kitts and Nevis? Should we ignore the Maldives because they aren't prominent members? No. So part of what I view as the application of transformational leadership in my tenure is to reach students in all the countries that we say we represent. Otherwise, I would view the CSA as an artificial representative body. If it doesn't truly represent the people from the countries it is constitutionally designed to represent, it's a shell organization. And I want the CSA to do what it says it's supposed to do. So we have been very targeted in reaching students in Asia and in the Pacific, because that's where we have not enjoyed high levels of participation. In terms of leading the team, I I am very serious, but I also like to lead with camaraderie. I like to build relationships with the persons I work with, but you can't do that from one direction. Relationship building requires both persons to be involved. So while I would want camaraderie, while I would want a safe, friendly workspace, if the person you're leading is only interested in keeping it strictly professional and doing the work, so be it. But I think for me, relational authority serves better more than just, okay, he's the chair, he has the position, he has the positional authority, so I report to him. I think we get far more done, and it makes it much easier to get it done when we lead from the relationships that we build. So I don't see my team members, and that's not just the EXCO, that's all the persons on various regional working groups, the subcommittees. I don't see them as just positions. I see them as people. And people have times of grief. They have family responsibilities, academic responsibilities. They experience burnout. There are times when they're not in the mood. There are times when they're on vacation. There are times when they need space. And those are things that I take into account when I measure how it is that we should be performing or how it is that we have performed. Yes. And in balancing that, I have tried my best to hold those persons who have committed to serving the CSA accountable, because it can't be that you're going to be permanently unavailable for whatever reason. But I do believe that effective leadership requires me to be proximate and requires me to be aware of what is happening with my team members to the extent that they'll allow me to know. Some things they don't tell you, but you pick it up. Either they'll post it or you realize that there's a change in the energy. You realize, okay, they started out this way, something is happening. You could approach them to talk. I sometimes I reach out to my colleagues to have non-CSA related catch-ups and talks, again, to the extent that they will share with me. There are questions that I ask, yes, because I am interested in them personally, but also it helps me know who it is that I'm working with. It helps me understand, if you set a deadline for somebody who is sick, you need to revisit that deadline. If somebody did something that is uncharacteristic, how do you approach it? The relational authority helps. Yes. I can't say I'm the best leader. I know I have my shortcomings. My major shortcomings are in administration. I am not a very good administrator. I'm not even good at managing meetings. I have team members who are very good at it, and I told them that I will be relying on them, to help me in that weakness. I also know that I need to do better in terms of communicating with my colleagues, my concerns where I don't see something being done. I really have had a history of just taking it on. I will just take it up and get it done without consulting you, which is not good. It's something that I did while I was in high school as student council president. It's something that I did while I was in college. And I'm seeing where I've sort of taken on remnants of that bad practice. It really comes from a place of passion where you just want to get something done. And if somebody's not doing it, you find a way to get it done. Yes, but you can't operate like that. It's not encouraging to participation. Kim, this has been a very good talk. I really do rely on you for your wisdom and your experience.
Thank you, Benji, for sharing insightful points you've raised. Absolutely. On grounding, we have to be grounded in the spiritual faith.
Indeed.
I think that's something that keeps us, no matter what, and it drives the passion, it drives the purpose.
Absolutely. It also drives self-awareness. When you are clear about your identity and what your purpose is, it grounds you and gives you some stability as a leader. Well, I hope that this conversation will reach the ears that it needs to reach. We have been vocal. We have been plain in what we're asking for, and respectfully so. And I thank you again, Kim, and I just really want to congratulate you on the work that your team has been doing. I think you have one more year to go in the office?
Correct.
Right. So we pretty much both have one more year to go, and may we take it higher than we had been before. You have a good evening, my friend, and take care. Thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you so much, Benji, and appreciate this the privilege to be on the platform. Also, congratulations to you and your team, and I wish you the very best in your leadership, sharing your experience and your wisdom and knowledge. It's always humbling to hear from you, and thank you so much to the audience as well.
Thank you, sir. Take care, everyone. Take care, Kim.
Thank you.